She took one bite of her mother-in-law's famous Thanksgiving gravy, and her blood ran cold. Not because it tasted bad, because it tasted wrong. Metallic chemical. The kind of taste you only recognize if you've spent years as a nurse teaching children about household poisons. Rachel Bennett was 7 months pregnant, surrounded by 18 family members who had never accepted her. Married to a man she was starting to suspect she never really knew. And her mother-in-law was watching
Miss
her
Bennett,
eat
we need to speak
with
with
the
you.
satisfied smile
You're under
of a
arrest.
predator watching its prey walk into a trap. What Rachel didn't know yet was that this wasn't Victoria's first victim. There were others, 3 dead, dozens poisoned. 25 years of secrets buried beneath charity galas and society smiles. What Victoria didn't know was that Rachel had just taken a sample of that gravy, and she was about to uncover a conspiracy that would destroy one of the most powerful families in Connecticut. But here's the twist you won't see coming. Victoria wasn't just a monster. She was a mother who had done monstrous things for reasons that might make you question everything you believe about right and wrong. Stay until the end, because the truth about why Victoria started killing will change how you see this entire story. This is the tale of the mother-in-law who poisoned her pregnant daughter-in-law's food at Thanksgiving, and the ordinary woman who brought down an empire of lies. Lesson and value. Statement. Before we begin, I want you to know something important. This story is about trusting yourself when everyone tells you you're crazy. It's about finding strength you didn't know you had. It's about the family we choose when the family we're born into fails us. If you've ever had a gut feeling that something was wrong, if you've ever been told you were paranoid, or too sensitive, or imagining things, this story is for you. Your instincts exist for a reason, and sometimes listening to them can save your life. I took one bite of my mother-in-law's famous Thanksgiving gravy, and I knew. Not because I'm some kind of poison expert. I'm not a detective. I'm not a scientist. I'm a school nurse from Ohio who spends her days bandaging scraped knees and calling parents about head lice. I've spent 12 years wiping tears and checking temperatures and convincing 6-year-olds that yes, they really do need to go back to class after their tummy ache mysteriously disappears right before math. But when you've spent your whole life waiting for the other shoe to drop, when you've learned the hard way that family is just a word people use before they hurt you, when you've been bounced from foster home to foster home and learned to read danger in the smallest of signs, you develop instincts. And every instinct I had was screaming one thing. This food is going to kill my baby. Let me take you back to that morning. That Thanksgiving morning when my life changed forever. I woke at 5 in the morning in the guest room of the Bennett estate. Not our guest room. The guest room. Because even after 4 years of marriage, I was still a guest in this house. Still an outsider. Still the girl from foster care who had somehow tricked their golden boy into putting a ring on her finger. The Bennett estate was the kind of house that belonged in the magazines. 12 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a kitchen bigger than the entire apartment I grew up in. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my car. The kind of house that makes you feel like a museum exhibit. Like you're being watched and judged by generations of people whose portraits hang in gilded frames along the hallways. I lay there in the darkness, one hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick. 7 months along, a little girl according to the ultrasound, my daughter, the first person in the world who would be truly, biologically, unquestionably mine. I wondered, for the 1000th time, why walking into this house always made me feel like I was shrinking, like the furniture was watching, like I was taking a test nobody had told me the rules to. The ceiling above me was painted with some kind of pastoral scene, Cherubs and clouds and women in flowing robes. I had stared at that ceiling every Thanksgiving for 4 years, unable to sleep, counting the hours until I could go home. Marcus slept peacefully beside me, my husband of 4 years, the man I had married, thinking I was finally getting the family I'd always wanted. He looked so innocent when he slept, so much like the man I had fallen in love with at that charity gala 5 years ago, when he had looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room instead of the catering staff. He'd been on his phone late last night, texting someone. The blue light had woken me up around midnight, and I had watched through half-closed eyes as he smiled at whatever was on his screen. When I asked who it was, he said, "Work." He always said, "Work." I got up to use the bathroom for the fourth time that night. Pregnancy, I thought as I navigated around the antique furniture in the dark. The only time in your life when you're simultaneously starving and nauseous, exhausted and unable to sleep, needing to pee constantly while your bladder gets used as a kickboxing bag by a tiny human with no concept of reasonable hours. The bathroom was bigger than my childhood bedroom. Marble floors, heated, a soaking tub that could fit 3 people, gold fixtures that I was always afraid to touch, because what if I left fingerprints and Victoria noticed and made another comment about how people who weren't raised with nice things don't know how to take care of them? I caught my reflection in the mirror. Pale skin, dark circles under my eyes, hair that had started going gray at the temples even though I was only 34. The face of a woman who had seen too much, who had survived too much, who was 7 months pregnant and already exhausted. By 6:30, I gave up on sleep and went downstairs. The kitchen was empty, thank God. The staff wouldn't arrive until 8, and Victoria never came downstairs before 9. I needed coffee. Well, decaf. Doctor's orders. But I needed the ritual of it, the warmth, the normalcy. My phone buzzed on the counter where I had left it charging. Elena, my coworker, and the closest thing I had to a best friend. Her text read, "Surviving question mark. Remember our code period. If you need emergency extraction comma, text me. Cranberry sauce, and I will call with a fake school emergency period." I smiled despite everything and typed back, "Just got here last night period so far. Victoria has commented on colon, my weight gain open parenthesis, too much close parenthesis, comma, my shoes open, parenthesis 2, casual clothes, parenthesis, comma, and my plans for the nursery, open parenthesis, too small, close, parenthesis period. We are on track for a record period." Elena's response came immediately. "Drink water, period, breathe, period, and remember dash. You are not crazy, period. She is that bad, period. I believe you, period. I believe you." 3 words that meant everything. Elena had taught me something important over the years we'd worked together, sharing the nurse's office and the burdens of dealing with helicopter parents and underfunded schools. When everyone around you is gaslighting you, when they're all telling you that your perceptions are wrong, you need one person who sees the truth. One witness. One voice saying no, you're not imagining it. That one person can save your sanity. I made my decaf and sat at the breakfast bar, watching the sun come up through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Bennett estate sat on 15 acres of manicured grounds, tennis courts, a swimming pool, a guest house that was bigger than most regular houses, all of it maintained by a staff of people whose names Victoria never bothered to learn. I had never belonged here. I had known it from the first time Marcus brought me home to meet his family, when Victoria had looked me up and down like I was a stain on her carpet and said, "Well, isn't she unexpected?" 4 years later, I was still unexpected, still wrong, still not enough. The family started arriving around noon, 18 people for dinner, the full Bennett clan, plus various hangers-on and society friends who had nowhere else to go. Derek and Christina came first, Marcus's older brother and his wife. Derek was 40, successful, cold, the kind of man who looked through you rather than at you, unless you had something he wanted. He ran the family's real estate development company, the one Marcus worked for, the one that kept us tied to the Bennetts in ways I had never fully understood when I said I do. His wife, Christina, was 35, blonde and beautiful, in a cashmere sweater that cost more than my car payment. She had the kind of beauty that came from good genetics and better dermatologists, the kind that made other women feel inadequate just by existing. She barely looked at me when she walked in, but I noticed something, the way her eyes followed Marcus as he crossed the room to greet his brother. Just for a second, just a flicker of something that disappeared as quickly as it appeared. I filed it away. Another piece of a puzzle I did not want to solve. The other family members arrived in waves. Aunts and uncles whose names I could never keep straight. Cousins who looked at me with the same vague disapproval as everyone else. Family friends who had known the Bennetts for generations and clearly wondered what Marcus was doing with someone like me, all blonde, all polished, all looking at me like I was a stain on their expensive furniture. 4 years of marriage, and I was still the girl from foster care who had somehow tricked their golden boy into putting a ring on her finger. 4 years of holidays and family dinners and passive-aggressive comments, and nothing had changed. Dinner preparation was a military operation, with Victoria as the general. She was 63 years old, silver-haired, perfectly poised. The kind of woman who had never worked a day in her life, but somehow managed to look exhausted by the burden of managing her wealth. She orchestrated the kitchen staff with the precision of a conductor, inspecting every dish, adjusting every garnish, making sure everything was absolutely perfect. The turkey had to be golden brown, not a shade lighter or darker. The table settings had to be precise, with exactly 2 inches between each piece of silverware. The wine had to breathe for exactly 45 minutes, not a minute more or less. I tried to help once, early in my marriage. I had made my grandmother's sweet potato casserole, the one dish I remembered from before my parents died, the one recipe I had carried with me through 7 foster homes like a talisman. Victoria had taken one look at it and said, "How rustic. We'll put it on the side table where it won't clash with the presentation." I never brought food to a Bennett Thanksgiving again, and then Victoria turned to me with that smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes, the one that had haunted my nightmares for 4 years. "Rachel, dear," her voice dripped sweetness like honey over poison. "I made a special gravy just for you, bone broth base, extra nutrients for the baby. I know you've been tired." The way she said tired, like it was a character flaw, like growing a human being inside my body was some kind of weakness, like I should apologize for the circles under my eyes and the swelling in my ankles and the fact that I couldn't fit into the size 4 dress she had suggested I wear. "Thank you, Victoria," I said. "That's very thoughtful of you." The gravy boat landed in front of me with a soft clink, dark brown, steaming, smelling of herbs and meat drippings. It looked beautiful. It smelled delicious. And Victoria was watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Everyone watched as I spooned it over my mashed potatoes. I took a bite. Something was wrong. Not bitter exactly. More like off. A metallic undertone beneath the rosemary and thyme. A taste that did not belong. That triggered something deep in my memory. Something from my nursing training. This tasted like the warning labels I taught kids about. What household chemicals taste like if accidentally ingested. the metallic sweetness that preceded kidney failure and seizures and death. I looked around the table, 18 faces, 18 people who would say I was crazy. I could already hear it. Pregnancy hormones. She's always been sensitive. You know how Rachel is? She never fit in with the family. She's probably just looking for attention. And for one terrible moment, I almost believed them, almost convinced myself I was imagining things, almost took another bite just to prove to myself that I was crazy, because crazy was easier than the alternative. The alternative was unthinkable. I swallowed what was in my mouth because spitting it out would cause a scene, and I could not afford a scene. I could not afford to be the hysterical, pregnant woman who ruined Thanksgiving. I could not afford to give Victoria one more piece of ammunition. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice steady through sheer force of will. "I need to use the restroom. The baby's pressing on my bladder." Polite laughter around the table. "Of course, dear," Victoria said. "Take your time." Her smile widened slightly, and I saw something in her eyes. Satisfaction, anticipation, the look of a predator watching its prey walk into a trap. I walked calmly down the hallway, past the portraits of generations of Bennetts, all those blue eyes and blonde hair and old money staring down at me, past the grandfather clock that chimed the hours, past the evidence of wealth and privilege and power that I had never belonged to and never would. The bathroom door closed behind me. I locked it, waited 3 seconds, listened for footsteps. Nothing. Then I moved fast. I spat everything into the toilet, rinsed my mouth with water from the sink, spat again, used my finger to trigger my gag reflex, bringing up what little I had swallowed. Rinsed again, spat again, over and over until the taste was gone, until my mouth was raw, until my hands stopped shaking enough to reach for my purse. I always carried plastic bags, a nursing habit from years of dealing with kids who got sick at school. I scraped the residue from my tongue with a tissue, sealed it in the bag, wrote the date and time on it with a pen from my purse. November 28th, 6:47 in the evening. Bennett Estate, Thanksgiving dinner, gravy served only to me. I stared at myself in the mirror, this ridiculous gilded mirror that probably cost more than my yearly salary. I grew up in foster care, 7 different homes before I aged out at 18. And in every single home, there was a moment like this. A moment when I knew something was wrong, and everyone told me I was imagining it. I was not going to let my daughter grow up that way. I was not going to be silenced again. I tucked the bag into my purse, fixed my expression in the mirror, until I looked like a woman who had just freshened up rather than a woman who had just realized her mother-in-law might be trying to kill her, and walked back to the dining room with steady steps. The gravy was still there, glistening on my mashed potatoes. I did not eat another bite. The drive home was 2 hours of silence and Christmas music and my husband humming along to Bing Crosby while I sat in the passenger seat wondering if his mother had just tried to murder me. "You barely ate anything," Marcus said, somewhere around hour 1. "Morning sickness. At 7 months, some women have it the whole pregnancy." He nodded, satisfied with the simple answer. He always was. Marcus saw the world in black and white, good and bad, simple explanations for complex problems. His mother loved him, therefore his mother was good. His wife was acting strange, therefore his wife was probably hormonal. End of story. I had loved that about him once, his certainty, his confidence, the way he moved through the world like he belonged in it, like every door would open for him because doors had always opened for him. Now I recognized it for what it was. Willful blindness. The privilege of never having to question whether the people who loved you might also want to hurt you. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. He glanced at it, smiled slightly, put it away without answering. "Who's that?" I asked. "Just Derek. Work stuff about the Henderson project." I did not believe him, had not believed him in months. The late nights at the office that never showed up on his calendar. The business trips that left no trace on the credit card statements. The way he angled his phone away from me whenever he texted. But belief and proof are different things, and I had learned long ago that nobody cares what you believe. They only care what you can prove. The next few days passed in a fog. I went to work. I bandaged scraped knees and checked temperatures and convinced 6-year-olds that yes, they really did need to go back to class. I smiled and nodded and acted normal while my mind raced through possibilities. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the herbs had been off. Maybe Victoria had used some specialty ingredient that tasted unusual. Maybe I was paranoid and hormonal, and everything the Bennetts had always said I was. But I could not shake the feeling, the taste, the way Victoria had watched me eat. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. First sick day I had taken in 3 years. Then I drove 2 hours to a private laboratory I had found online, one that specialized in testing for toxic substances. The building was nondescript, a gray concrete box in an industrial park. The kind of place you would never notice unless you were looking for it. I paid cash at the front desk and filled out paperwork with a fake name because I did not know who the Bennetts knew, how far their influence reached, who might report back to Victoria. The waiting room had magazines from 2019 and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. I flipped through a 3-year-old copy of Good Housekeeping while I waited. 10 Ways to Spice. Up your marriage, the cover promised. Try having your mother-in-law poison your Thanksgiving gravy, I thought. That will definitely spice things up. The lab technician was a young woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. She did not ask why I was having food tested for toxins. She did not raise an eyebrow when I handed over a plastic bag with what looked like scraped gravy residue. She just took the sample, confirmed what I wanted to test for, and told me results would take 48 hours. "What am I testing for?" she asked. "Everything," I said. "Heavy metals, household chemicals, medications, everything that should not be in food." She gave me a look. I recognized that look. Domestic situation. Probably, her eyes said. Another woman in trouble. Another woman who had to prove what she already knew. But she did not ask questions. I appreciated that. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. I went through the motions, made dinner, talked to Marcus about his day, rubbed my belly when the baby kicked, pretended everything was normal while I waited for the phone to ring. I did not tell Elena what I had done. I did not tell anyone. Because if I was wrong, if the test came back negative, then I would know for sure that I was crazy. That Victoria was just a difficult mother-in-law, not a murderer, that I was letting my childhood trauma color my perception of reality. And if I was right, I could not think about that. Not yet. The call came on Wednesday afternoon at 3:17. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of the elementary school, unable to go inside, unable to face the normalcy of my job, when my entire world might be about to collapse. "Mrs. Bennett?" The lab tech's voice was careful, measured, the kind of voice you use when you are about to deliver bad news. "The sample you submitted tested positive for ethylene glycol." I knew what that was. Every nurse did. "Antifreeze?" She continued. "The concentration was significant. Based on the amount you described in the original sample, if someone consumed the full portion..." She trailed off. She did not need to finish. "We're talking about a potentially lethal dose," she said. "Definitely enough to cause kidney damage. Possibly enough to cause organ failure." My vision went gray at the edges. The parking lot tilted. I gripped the steering wheel to keep myself upright. "And for a pregnant woman?" I asked. The words came out in a whisper. She was quiet for a moment. "I would recommend contacting the police," she said finally. "This is not accidental contamination. Someone put this in your food deliberately. And Mrs. Bennett, if you're pregnant, you need to see a doctor. Even a small amount of ethylene glycol can affect fetal development." I hung up the phone, sat in my car, stared at the brick wall of the school where I had worked for 12 years. For 26 years, I had been taught to doubt myself. Every foster home, every caseworker, every teacher who looked at my file and decided I was troubled before they ever met me. Every adjustment period, every time I knew something was wrong and was told I was imagining it. For once in my life, I was not imagining anything. That night, I showed Marcus the lab report. I waited until dinner was over, until the dishes were done, until we were sitting in the living room of our modest house that was so different from the Bennett estate. Then I handed him the piece of paper that confirmed his mother had tried to kill me. He read it 3 times. His face cycled through emotions I had never seen before: confusion, denial, anger, fear, something that looked almost like recognition, like a memory surfacing that he had tried very hard to bury. "This has to be a mistake," he said finally. "The lab ran it twice. My mother would never—" "The gravy was only served to me. She made it special. Just for me. You're talking about my mother." He was getting angry now, his voice rising. "My mother. This is insane. Insane." There it was, the word that had followed me through every foster home, every teacher's conference, every attempt to be believed. I had known he would say it, had known before I showed him the report, had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in my head and known exactly how it would go. But I had to try. I had to give him the chance to be the man I married. He was not that man. "You need rest," he said. "The pregnancy, the stress, maybe you should talk to someone. A professional." My voice came out quiet. "Deadly. You're choosing her. You're actually choosing her. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm trying to be rational here. You're accusing my mother of attempted murder based on one lab test. What would I need for you to believe me, Marcus? A body? Your daughter's body?" He flinched. Actually flinched, like I had hit him, but he did not change his answer. "I think you need to get some sleep," he said. "We can talk about this in the morning when you're thinking more clearly." He went upstairs. I heard him on the phone a few minutes later, his voice low and urgent. I could not hear the words, but I could guess who he was calling. Victoria. I slept on the couch that night, or rather, I lay on the couch in the dark, staring at the ceiling, one hand on my belly, feeling my daughter kick. "I'm going to protect you," I whispered, "whatever it takes. Whatever I have to do. I'm not going to let her hurt you." But I did not know how. I did not know who to trust. I did not know if anyone would believe me. I was completely, utterly alone. Within 48 hours, the family closed ranks. Marcus's aunt called, concerned about my mental health. She had heard I was under a lot of stress, she said. She had heard I was making accusations about poor Victoria. She thought perhaps I should talk to someone, get some rest. Remember that pregnancy can do strange things to a woman's mind. Derek left a voicemail suggesting I get help before this embarrasses everyone. His voice was cold, clipped. The voice of a man who had already decided I was the enemy. The family lawyer sent a letter, a formal letter, on expensive letterhead, warning about the consequences of defamatory statements, warning about the legal action the Bennett family was prepared to take if I continued to spread malicious lies about Victoria Bennett. And Marcus moved to the guest room. To give me space, he said, to let me calm down, to wait until I was thinking more clearly. I sat on the floor of the nursery, surrounded by baby clothes I had bought secondhand because we could not afford new, and I realized the truth. I had no one, no parents. They died in a car accident when I was 8, and I had been alone ever since. No siblings, no extended family, no one who remembered my birthday, or knew my favorite color, or cared whether I lived or died. I had thought marrying Marcus would give me a family. I had thought I was finally finding what I had searched for my whole life. Instead, I had given myself to a family that had never wanted me, never accepted me, and was now trying to destroy me. The baby kicked, a strong one, right against my ribs. I pressed my hand against my belly. "I have you," I whispered into the darkness. "I'm supposed to protect you, and I don't know how, but I was going to figure it out." I had survived foster care. I had survived losing my parents. I had survived being told I was worthless and unwanted and too much trouble. I was going to survive this too. Elena showed up at my door 3 days after Thanksgiving with a bag of takeout in one hand and a bottle of sparkling cider in the other. "Before you say anything," she said, pushing past me into the apartment, "I believe you." I stood in the doorway, stunned. "You haven't even heard what happened." "Doesn't matter." She set the food on my kitchen counter and turned to face me. "You're the most grounded person I know. In 12 years of working together, I have never seen you overreact to anything. I've seen you handle lice outbreaks and angry parents and that kid who threw up on your shoes 3 times. In one day. If you say something's wrong, something's wrong. Tell me everything." And I did. The gravy, the taste, the lab results, Marcus's reaction, the family's counterattack, the letters from lawyers and the phone calls from aunts, and the way my husband had looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was the enemy. When I finished, Elena was quiet for a long moment. She had pulled containers of Chinese food out of the bag while I talked, arranged them on the counter, found plates and forks. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had been through her own crisis, who knew that sometimes the best thing you could do for someone was feed them. "First," she said finally, "you need to eat. You're 7 months pregnant, and you've probably lost 5 pounds in the past week. I'm not hungry. I didn't ask if you were hungry. I said you need to eat. I ate." The lo mein was lukewarm, and probably not on my approved pregnancy diet, but Elena was right. I needed the fuel. "Second," she said, "document everything. Screenshots of texts, dates, and times of every conversation. Copies of that lab report in 3 different places. Email it to yourself and me and anyone else you trust. My ex tried to gaslight me too. The only thing that saved me in court was my documentation. Elena had been married for 8 years to a man who convinced her she was crazy, who moved money around and lied about affairs, and somehow made her apologize when she caught him. She had gotten out, eventually, rebuilt her life, raised 3 kids on her own while working full-time as a school nurse. If anyone knew what I was going through, it was her. "I don't even know if I'm going to court," I said. "I don't know what I'm doing. You're surviving. That's what you're doing. And you're not doing it alone." The next day I went to the police. I expected to be dismissed. A pregnant woman accusing her wealthy mother-in-law of poisoning? I could already imagine the looks, the condescending tone, the suggestion that maybe I should see someone about my anxiety. The Bennetts were important in this town. They donated to the Police Benevolent Association. They golfed with the mayor. They had lawyers who could make problems disappear. Instead, I met Detective James Walker. He was 42, with tired eyes and a wedding ring, tan line on his left hand, where a band had recently been removed. "Cold Case Division," his desk said. The kind of cop who got the cases nobody else wanted, the ones that had gone cold because the victims were not important enough or the suspects were too powerful. He listened to my entire story without interrupting, took notes in a small leather notebook, asked clarifying questions, looked at the lab results with an expression I could not read. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Bennet, how long have you been married into that family?" 4 years. "And in those 4 years, has anyone else gotten sick? Suddenly? Unexpectedly?" I stared at him. I had never thought to ask that question. I had been so focused on my own situation, my own survival, that I had never considered there might be other victims. "Because I've been investigating a death connected to the Bennett family for 3 years," he continued. "Robert Bennett, Victoria's husband, died of kidney failure in 1999. Natural causes, they said. But the pattern never sat right with me." "What pattern?" "He was healthy, 52 years old, no history of kidney problems, no risk factors, and then suddenly, over the course of about 3 months, his kidneys just failed. The doctors couldn't explain it. The family didn't want an autopsy. He was buried within 3 days of his death. I felt something shift in my chest, a cold certainty settling into my bones. "You think she killed him?" I said, "her own husband. I think there are a lot of unanswered questions about that death. And I think," he looked at me steadily, "that you might be the person who finally helps me answer them." For the first time since Thanksgiving, I saw myself reflected in someone else's eyes. Someone who did not think I was crazy. Someone who had his own reasons to believe. "You believe me," I said. "I've been waiting for someone like you," he replied. "Someone on the inside. Someone who saw what she really is." Over the next 2 weeks, Walker became my ally. More than ally. My partner in this investigation. We met in coffee shops and parking lots, in his cramped office at the police station after everyone else had gone home. We pored over old case files, financial records, newspaper clippings. We built a timeline of every illness, every accident, every death connected to the Bennett family. He was careful, professional. He never crossed any lines, but there was warmth there that I had not felt in a long time. He brought me tea when we worked late, remembering, without being told, that I did not like coffee. He noticed when I had not eaten and ordered food without asking. He checked in on me, asked how I was sleeping, whether the baby was okay. He was nothing like Marcus. Marcus, who had not noticed I had lost 5 pounds in the past week. Marcus, who could not remember my favorite color, or my birthday, or the names of the kids I had lost in foster care. Marcus, who had chosen his mother over me without a second thought. James Walker remembered everything. "You should go home," he said one night around 11, after we had spent hours going through Robert Bennett's medical records. "Get some rest. The baby needs you to take care of yourself. If I go home, Marcus will ask where I've been. I can't explain this to him. You're not safe there. I'm not safe anywhere. At least here, I'm doing something." We found our first real lead on a cold December morning. Margaret Holloway, Victoria's former housekeeper, 78 years old, living in a nursing home 2 hours outside the city. She had worked for the Bennetts for 12 years, from 1987 to 1999, the year Robert Bennett died. The nursing home smelled like disinfectant and loneliness, like every institution I had ever been placed in as a child. But Margaret Holloway's eyes were sharp, her mind clear, her memory intact. She sat in a wheelchair by the window of her small room, looking out at a garden that had gone brown with winter. When we told her why we were there, she did not seem surprised. "I've been waiting for someone to come asking questions," she said. 25 years I've been waiting." "What can you tell us about Robert Bennett's death?" Walker asked. "She poisoned him," Margaret said. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. "Mrs. Victoria. I saw her do it." The story came out slowly, carefully, like she was pulling it from a locked box she had kept hidden for decades. It was early morning, about a week before Mr. Robert died. 4 o'clock, maybe 4:15. I came back to the house because I'd forgotten my glasses. I needed them for my daughter's graduation, which was that weekend. Let myself in through the service entrance, quiet as I could, didn't want to wake anyone. And what did you see? Mrs. Victoria was in the kitchen, in her robe, hair down. I'd never seen her less than perfectly put together before. She had a small bottle in her hand, brown glass, no label. She was pouring something into Mr. Roberts' coffee maker, drop by drop, very careful, like she was following a recipe. Margaret's hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. The voice of a woman who had carried this secret for too long and was finally ready to let it go. I told the police, she said. After he died, I gave a statement, told them exactly what I saw. The detective nodded and wrote everything down, said he'd look into it, said they took all reports seriously. But nothing happened, Walker said. Nothing ever happens to the Bennetts. Margaret's laugh was bitter, the laugh of someone who had learned that lesson the hard way. The detective retired 2 months after Mr. Roberts' funeral. Full pension, new house. The case was closed as natural causes, and I was quietly let go. Victoria fired you. Mrs. Victoria said they needed to reduce staff after the funeral. Budget concerns, she said. But she looked at me when she said it, looked right into my eyes. She knew I'd talked. She knew I'd seen something. And then, about a month later, I got a letter from a law firm, reminding me about the confidentiality agreement I'd signed when I was hired, reminding me that spreading false accusations could have legal consequences. Margaret had more than memories. She had a journal kept for 25 years, documentation of every strange death, every mysterious illness, every person who got too close to the Bennett family and then suffered for it. James Manning, she said, flipping through the worn pages, Mrs. Victoria's brother-in-law, died in 1994, kidney failure. He had voted against giving Mrs. Victoria a loan from the family trust about 6 weeks before he got sick. She turned another page. David Porter died in 2003. He was on the board of the Bennett Foundation. Voted against one of Mrs. Victoria's projects. Dead within 2 months. More pages, more names, more patterns. We have a witness, I told Walker that night, sitting in his car in the parking lot of the nursing home. We have evidence. We have the lab results. This is it. This is enough. I actually believed it. I should have known better. We went back to the nursing home 3 days later to take Margaret's formal statement on video. Proper documentation that could be used in court. Evidence that could not be dismissed or explained away. She was gone. Transferred, the administrator told us. Family decision. No forwarding information. Her emergency contact authorized the move, the administrator explained, checking her records. A Mrs. Victoria Bennett. The trap had been closing around me for days, and I had not even seen it. Victoria had been watching. Of course she had been watching. She had spent 25 years covering her tracks, eliminating threats, silencing anyone who got too close to the truth. Did I really think she would let some nursing home interview destroy everything she had built? How did she even know we were here? I asked Walker. He shook his head, grimly. She has connections everywhere. The Bennetts donate to this facility. Half the staff probably reports to her. We tried to find Margaret, called every nursing home in a 200-mile radius, filed missing persons reports that went nowhere, contacted Margaret's daughter, who said her mother had been moved for her own safety and refused to say more. Victoria had gotten to everyone. That night, Marcus came home angry. It was the first time in 2 weeks he had come home before midnight. The first time he had looked at me directly instead of through me. But his eyes were cold, and his jaw was set. And I knew before he opened his mouth that this was not going to be a reconciliation. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded. "Going to nursing homes? Talking to detectives? Digging up dirt on my family? I'm trying to find the truth." "The truth?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The truth is that my mother is a 63-year-old woman who has devoted her life to charity and family. The truth is that my wife is having some kind of breakdown and dragging my mother's name through the mud. Your mother tried to kill me. Stop saying that. He had never yelled at me before. In 4 years of marriage, he had never raised his voice. Now he was shouting, his face red, veins standing out on his neck. Stop saying that. My mother is not a murderer. I have proof. Lab results. A witness who saw. You have conspiracy theories and a woman with dementia who will say whatever you want to hear. I went very still. Who told you Margaret has dementia? He paused. Caught. The anger on his face flickered, replaced for just a moment by something that looked like fear. I never told you her name, I said slowly. I never told you anything about her. How do you know who she is? Mom mentioned. He was scrambling now, trying to recover. She said someone was harassing her former employees, asking questions, making accusations. Your mother knew. She knew where I was and who I was talking to. She knew before I ever showed up at that nursing home, which means she was watching me, which means she had people following me, which means she's scared, Marcus. Innocent people don't hire private investigators to follow their daughters-in-law. You're paranoid. I'm observant. There's a difference. His phone buzzed on the counter. He reached for it automatically, then stopped when he saw me watching. Go ahead, I said. Answer it. Let me guess who it is. He did not answer it, but I saw the screen before he could hide it. One text, one name, one word that changed everything. Christina, miss you. Our eyes met. He knew I had seen. Rachel, he started. His voice was different now, pleading, desperate. It's not what you think. It's not what I think. I heard my own voice, calm and cold, like it was coming from very far away. Your brother's wife just texted you miss you, and it's not what I think? We're friends. We've always been close. How close? The truth came out in fragments. Ugly, brutal, each piece worse than the last. 2 years. He had been sleeping with his brother's wife for 2 years. Since before I got pregnant. Since before we started trying for a baby. All those nights when he said he was working late. All those business trips. All those times he came home smelling like perfume and claimed it was from a client meeting. Victoria knew. Victoria had been helping them hide it, providing alibis, covering tracks, because Victoria had never wanted me in the family, had never accepted me, and if Marcus had a mistress, that gave Victoria leverage, control. She knows, I said. My voice was steady. Dead? Your mother knows you're cheating on me with your brother's wife. And she's helping you? It's complicated, Marcus said. It's not complicated. You're a cheater. She's an enabler. And I'm just the incubator for the grandchild she actually wants. I understood now. All of it. Victoria did not hate me because I was poor or common or not good enough. Victoria hated me because I was unnecessary. A vessel, a means to an end. Once the baby was born, once she had her grandchild, my usefulness was over. The poison was not about control. It was about disposal. I need you to leave, I said. Rachel, please, can we just talk about this? I think we're done talking. I think we've been done for a while. He left. I do not know where he went. I did not care. I sat in the dark living room of the house we had shared for 4 years, the house where we had planned to raise our family, and I felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had broken years ago, in foster homes and group houses and all the places where I had learned that love was a weapon people used against you. What broke was something else. Some last, desperate hope that I had been wrong about everything, that Marcus loved me, that his family would accept me, that I had finally found the belonging I had searched for my whole life. That hope was gone now, and in its place was something harder, something colder, determination. Walker called the next morning with more bad news. The lab results were gone. Someone had broken into my car, taken my copies. The original from the lab had been disposed of per protocol after a lawyer showed up with paperwork claiming patient privacy issues and procedural violations. The sample had been contaminated, the lawyer claimed. The results were unreliable. The lab was willing to settle out of court to avoid a lawsuit. She's covering her tracks, Walker said. She knows we're coming. What do? We find another way? We don't give up. But his voice was less certain now, and I felt the ground crumbling beneath my feet. The stress took its toll. Of course it did. At 32 weeks pregnant, after weeks of fear and betrayal and sleepless nights, my body finally gave out. I woke up in a hospital bed with monitors beeping and an IV in my arm and a doctor telling me I had gone into early labor. They had stopped the contractions, but I needed complete rest. Complete rest and no stress and regular monitoring, and if I did not take care of myself, if I did not prioritize the baby's health over everything else, I could lose her. Walker was there when I woke up, sitting in the chair beside my bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, like he had been there all night. Marcus was not. I lay there, hand on my belly, feeling the baby move, still alive, still fighting. My daughter, who had survived everything I had survived, who was still holding on despite it all. I'm sorry, I whispered to her. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I brought you into this family. I'm sorry I'm not stronger. But even as I said it, I knew it was not true. I was strong. I had survived foster care, nursing school, 7 different homes before I turned 18. Years of being told I was worthless and unwanted and too much trouble. I was going to survive this too. 3 days in the hospital. 3 days of bed rest and monitoring and nurses who looked at me with pity because they had seen my chart, seen that my husband had not visited, seen the way I flinched whenever the phone rang. Walker came every day. He brought flowers, real flowers, daisies and sunflowers that he picked up from a grocery store on the way. Not the ostentatious arrangements the Bennett family sent, the ones that filled half the room and smelled like a funeral home and came with cards that said things like, "Thinking of you during this difficult time." I found something, he said on the second day. While you were here, I kept digging. Tell me, Robert Bennett's death in '99. Everyone said kidney failure, natural causes. But I tracked down the original coroner. Retired now, living in Florida. He said something always bothered him about that case. What? The family insisted on a quick burial. Threatened lawsuits when he wanted to run more tests. Said it was disrespectful to the grieving widow that they would make sure he never worked again if he didn't sign off on natural causes. He backed off because he had a mortgage and 2 kids in college, but he regretted it ever since. Walker sat forward in the uncomfortable hospital chair. He told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "When families fight that hard against the truth, there's always a reason. The truth is expensive. That's why they're willing to pay anything to bury it." There was a knock at the door. A woman entered, and for a moment I did not recognize her, without the country club polish, without the designer clothes and perfect makeup, and the mask she wore around the Bennett family. Christina. I expected cruelty, expected gloating. The mistress come to survey the damage, to see the wife laid low, to stake her claim on the man she had stolen. Instead, she closed the door behind her, looked at Walker, looked at me, and said, "I'm not here to apologize for Marcus. What he did, what we did, was wrong. But that's not why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" "Because Victoria is planning something, and I think you need to know." She sat down in the other visitor's chair. Her hands were trembling slightly. She looked tired, I realized. Worn, like she had not slept in days. What followed was a story I had not expected. "When I married Derek," she said, "I was pregnant 2 months along. We hadn't planned it, but we were happy. I thought we were happy. She paused, gathered herself. Victoria was attentive, more attentive than she'd ever been to me before. She brought me special teas, special supplements. For the baby, she said, to make sure the baby was healthy, to make sure I was taking care of myself. What happened? I lost the baby at 4 months. Christina's voice was flat. The voice of someone telling a story they had told themselves 1,000 times. The voice of someone who had learned to survive by not feeling. Doctors couldn't explain it. Everything had been fine at the 12-week ultrasound, strong heartbeat, good development, and then suddenly, nothing. She looked at me directly. Derek blamed me, said I wasn't taking care of myself, said I must have done something wrong. Victoria comforted him while I cried alone. I felt something cold settle in my chest, an understanding that made everything worse. I got pregnant again a year later, Christina continued, lost that one too, and again the year after that. 3 babies, 3 unexplained losses, and every single time, Victoria was there with her teas and her supplements and her special care. She leaned forward. I never thought, who thinks their mother-in-law is poisoning them? It's insane. It's the kind of thing crazy people believe. So I told myself it was bad luck. Told myself some women just couldn't carry pregnancies. Told myself it was my fault somehow. Even though the doctors couldn't find anything wrong. But you don't believe that anymore, Walker said. Christina shook her head. After I heard what she did to you, she said to me, I started thinking, started remembering. The timing of those miscarriages. The teas Victoria insisted I drink. The way she watched me. The same way she watched you at Thanksgiving. I looked at this woman, my husband's mistress, my enemy, and saw something I recognized. Saw the same hollow eyes I saw in my own mirror. Saw the same desperate need to be believed. Saw the same years of being told she was imagining things, of being made to feel crazy for trusting her own instincts. She did the same thing to you, I said. I think she's been doing it to everyone, Christina replied. Anyone who threatens her control. Anyone who gets too close to her sons. Anyone who might take them away from her. And I think it's time we stopped her. We built a new alliance that day. Rachel, Christina, Walker, an unlikely team united by a common enemy. I should have hated Christina. Part of me did hate her, for the affair, for the betrayal, for the way she had smiled at me across family dinners while sleeping with my husband. But hate was a luxury I could not afford. I needed allies. I needed people who knew Victoria, who had access to the Bennett family, who could help me find the proof I needed. The enemy of my enemy was my friend, even if that friend had been sleeping with my husband. We need to exhume Robert Bennett's body, Walker said. Get new forensic analysis. If she poisoned him the same way she tried to poison you, there might still be traces in his remains. Victoria would never allow that, Christina said. She wouldn't have to. If we can prove probable cause to a judge, show a pattern of behavior, we can get a court order. She doesn't get a vote. A pattern, I said. We need other victims. And we found them. Over the next 3 weeks, working from my hospital bed and then from my apartment after I was discharged, we tracked down 4 other women connected to the Bennett family. Jennifer Walsh. She had dated Derek in college, back when he was still capable of human emotion. She developed sudden severe gastrointestinal illness during her senior year, right around the time she and Derek were talking about getting engaged. The illness lasted 3 months and nearly cost her the semester. She broke up with Derek while she was still in the hospital, and the illness mysteriously cleared up within weeks. Samantha Reed. She had been engaged to Marcus before me, beautiful, accomplished, from a good family. Victoria had approved of her at first. But then Samantha started asking questions about the family finances, about Robert Bennett's death, about why there were so many gaps in the family history. She developed sudden severe anxiety, panic attacks so bad she could barely leave her house. She broke off the engagement and moved across the country. 3 years later, she killed herself. The official cause was depression, but her sister told us Samantha had never been depressed before she met the Bennetts, had never had a panic attack in her life until Victoria started sending her special herbal supplements for stress. Patricia Moore. She had worked as Victoria's personal assistant for 2 months in 2010. She quit after developing chronic fatigue so severe she could barely get out of bed. Her doctors never figured out what was wrong. It cleared up within a month of leaving the Bennett household. And Margaret Holloway, of course, the housekeeper who had seen too much and been silenced for 25 years. We have a pattern, I told Walker the night we finished compiling the files. 5 women, not counting Christina, not counting me. All of them got sick while connected to the Bennett family. All of them recovered after leaving. All of them were willing to talk. I'm taking this to the DA tomorrow, Walker said. With this much evidence, they'll have to listen. We're going to get that exhumation order. It's over, I said. It's finally over. I should have known better. Walker came back from the DA's office gray-faced. I knew something was wrong the moment he walked through my apartment door. He looked like a man who had just watched something die, something he had believed in, something he had hoped would be different. The Bennett family donates heavily to the DA's re-election campaign, he said. 6 figures every cycle. They golf together. Their wives are in the same book club. No. He called our evidence circumstantial, said pursuing this would be politically unwise, said there was no way a jury would convict based on pattern evidence and the testimony of disgruntled former employees. So she just gets away with it? He suggested I focus on solvable cases instead of witch hunts. I sat down heavily on my couch. 7 months pregnant, exhausted, betrayed by everyone I had ever trusted. The baby kicked, hard, like she could feel my despair. I had spent my whole life believing in systems. Foster care, even with its flaws, had kept me alive. When I had nowhere else to go, school had given me a path out of poverty. Nursing had given me purpose. A way to help people, a career I could be proud of. But there was no system for this, no form to fill out, no process to follow, no authority who would help. Victoria Bennett was rich enough to buy justice. She could silence witnesses and destroy evidence and make problems disappear with a single phone call. I was too poor to afford any of that. Then Victoria counterattacked. The first catastrophe came 3 days after Walker's meeting with the DA. A social worker appeared at my apartment door. Professional smile, clipboard in hand, the kind of studied neutrality that meant she had already decided I was guilty of something. Mrs. Bennett? I'm with Child Protective Services. We've received an anonymous report about your living situation and would like to conduct a welfare check. A welfare check? The report alleged that you're experiencing a mental health crisis, that you've been making violent threats against family members, that there are concerns about your ability to care for a child. I haven't made any threats. I haven't done anything wrong. The report mentioned obsessive behavior and paranoid delusions. The social worker's voice was carefully neutral. She was just doing her job. She had no idea she was a weapon being wielded by a murderer. We're required to investigate all reports involving children. I'm not even showing signs of a mental health crisis. I'm scared because someone tried to poison me. She made a note on her clipboard. That kind of statement is exactly what the report described. Victoria was trying to take my baby before she was even born, trying to establish a paper trail of mental instability that could be used in a custody hearing, trying to paint me as an unfit mother before I even had a chance to be a mother at all. The second catastrophe came the next day. I lost my job. The principal called me into her office with a concerned expression. She had known me for 12 years, had written glowing performance reviews, had called me the heart of our nursing staff just last spring. Now she could barely meet my eyes. "Rachel, we've received some concerning information. An anonymous letter with photographs. Photographs of what? You, and a man who isn't your husband, leaving what appears to be a motel, multiple times." She showed me the photos, me and Walker, leaving the nursing home where we had interviewed Margaret. Except the photos had been cropped and edited. The nursing home sign was gone, replaced by what looked like a motel logo. The timestamps had been altered, the context had been destroyed. "We're investigating a crime," I said. "He's a detective. We were interviewing a witness." "The school board doesn't..." The principal sighed. "Look, Rachel, I believe you, but the board has to respond to complaints. And with the other reports, the CPS investigation..." "What other reports?" "Someone called the superintendent. Said you'd been making accusations against prominent community members. Said you were unstable, potentially dangerous. The board thinks it's best if you take leave, effective immediately. I'm being fired because someone is trying to frame me. You're being placed on administrative leave, pending investigation." She finally met my eyes. "I'm sorry, my hands are tied." The third catastrophe came that weekend. Marcus filed for divorce and custody. He showed up at my apartment with a lawyer, a stack of papers, and a look on his face I had never seen before. Cold, determined. The look of a man who had been given permission to stop pretending. "My lawyers say you're unfit," he said. "The mental health concerns, the job loss, the affair. I didn't have an affair. Those photos are fake. The court doesn't care." His voice was flat, rehearsed. Words someone else had put in his mouth. "My family's lawyers are very good at making courts believe things. You know I didn't cheat. You know your mother is behind all of this. I know my mother is protecting our family, like she always has." He paused. Something in his face changed, hardened. "When the baby is born, she's coming home with me. My mother will help raise her. Give her the life you can't provide. A real family, real stability, everything you never had." That was the plan. That was what Victoria had wanted all along. Not just to kill me, to replace me, to take the baby and raise it as a Bennett, without the inconvenient mother who had never been good enough, who had never belonged, who was just a vessel for the grandchild Victoria actually wanted. I had thought I was fighting for my life. I was wrong. I was fighting for my daughter's soul. That night, I sat on the floor of what would have been the nursery, the room I had painted sage green, the color of hope, the crib I had assembled myself because Marcus was always too busy, the mobile of stars and moons I had found at a thrift store and cleaned up until it looked almost new. I thought about giving up, really thought about it. What was the point? Victoria had won. She would always win. She had money and lawyers and connections and a family that would lie for her. She had a system that did not care about justice, only about convenience. She had been doing this for 25 years, and no one had ever stopped her. I had nothing. No family, no job, no evidence, no hope. For the first time in my life, I understood why people disappeared, why they stopped fighting, why they let the world roll over them and crush them and keep moving without a second thought. It would be easier, so much easier. My phone rang. "Elena." "I heard," she said, "about the job, the divorce, all of it. I'm coming over." "Don't, I can't." "I didn't ask. I'm coming. You don't get to be alone right now. You don't get to give up. You hear me? I didn't survive an abusive marriage and rebuild my entire life from nothing just to watch my best friend surrender to some rich bitch with a poison collection." She showed up with ice cream and a folder full of printed documents. "What's this?" I asked. "What every woman with a crazy mother-in-law needs to know. I've spent the last 2 days researching instead of sleeping. Grandparents' rights in this state, custody precedents, how to fight when the other side has more money, how to document evidence that can't be destroyed." She sat down beside me on the nursery floor. "You're not alone, Rachel. You've never been alone, even when you felt like you were. And we're not done. Not by a long shot." An hour later, Walker called. His voice was different, energized. "I found her. Margaret Holloway. Victoria had her transferred to a facility in Vermont, but I tracked her down. Took me 3 days, but I found her. Can she still testify?" "Better than that. She recorded something before they moved her. A video statement, witnessed by 3 staff members, notarized, uploaded to a cloud server Victoria doesn't know about." "What does it say?" "Everything, Rachel. It says everything. And there's something else. Something about Robert Bennett that changes everything." I watched Margaret Holloway's video on Walker's laptop, sitting in my cramped apartment with Christina beside me and Elena on my other side. 3 women who had no reason to trust each other, united by a common enemy. Margaret looked directly into the camera. Frail but fierce, her white hair pulled back from her face, her eyes sharp despite her age. "I've been quiet for 25 years, she said. "Scared for 25 years. But I'm 80 years old, and I'll be dead soon, and I'm not going to my grave carrying this secret." She took a breath. Victoria Bennett killed her husband, Robert. I saw her do it. Antifreeze in his coffee, every morning for 3 months, just enough to make him sick slowly. The doctors called it kidney failure. I called it murder. She paused, gathered herself. "But here's what everyone needs to understand. Victoria wasn't always a monster. When I first met her, she was just a young mother trying to protect her children. She became a monster. And I know why." I leaned forward. This was not what I expected. Robert Bennett was a monster first. Margaret's voice cracked. "What he did to those boys." I heard things. Late at night, sounds no child should make. I saw bruises on them that they couldn't explain. I saw the way Marcus flinched when his father touched him, even just a hand on the shoulder. I saw Derek go from a sweet little boy who liked to help me bake cookies to someone cold and empty, someone who looked at the world like it was an enemy. She was crying now, tears running down her weathered cheeks. I tried to say something once. I asked Derek about a bruise on his arm and the look he gave me. He said it was nothing, said he fell, said I should mind my own business. He was 10 years old, and he already knew how to keep the family secrets. Victoria didn't poison her husband for money, Margaret continued. She did it to protect her sons. She poisoned him to stop what he was doing to those boys. And I think part of me understood. Part of me looked the other way, all those years, because Robert Bennett deserved to die. She wiped her eyes, but then she kept doing it. Anyone who threatened her boys, anyone who got too close, anyone who might find out what really happened in that house, what she had done, what Robert had done. She couldn't stop. The monster she became to save her children, it took over. The video ended. We sat in silence for a long moment. She killed to protect her children from abuse, I finally said. And then she kept killing to protect them from the truth, Walker replied. Does that make her understandable? It makes her human. It doesn't make her innocent. I thought about my own daughter, thought about what I would do to protect her. Would I kill? Would I lie? Would I become someone unrecognizable if it meant keeping her safe? There is something universally terrifying about realizing that the villain of your story might have been a victim first, that the person trying to destroy you might have reasons you could almost understand. It does not make them right. It does not excuse what they have done. But it makes them human, and somehow that makes everything worse. Because if Victoria could become a monster while trying to protect her children, what did that say about the rest of us? What did that say about me? The question was not what Victoria had done 25 years ago, I realized. The question was what she was doing now. Trying to take a baby from her mother. Trying to poison an innocent woman. Trying to destroy anyone who threatened her control. Whatever Victoria had been, whatever suffering had shaped her, she had become the very thing she once fought against. She had become the abuser, the monster, the person who hurt innocent people because she had convinced herself it was necessary. I was not going to let her hurt my daughter. Christina delivered the final piece of the puzzle. She had been secretly copying Victoria's files for months, ever since her third miscarriage, when she had started to suspect the truth but could not bring herself to believe it. Financial records, private emails, a detailed calendar of every accident and illness in the Bennett family circle, going back decades. She keeps records, Christina said, of everything. She's so convinced she's untouchable, she doesn't even bother to hide it properly. She thinks no one would ever dare to look. Among the files were receipts for chemicals purchased over 20 years, medical articles about symptoms of antifreeze poisoning printed from 1999, a list of names with dates next to them, some with check marks. My name was on the list. Due date, December. She was planning to wait until the baby was born, Christina said quietly. Then eliminate you. Make it look like postpartum complications. Tragic, but natural. A new mother, overwhelmed with a history of mental health concerns. I stared at the list. My name, my daughter's due date. A check mark that had not been made yet. Not this time, I said. Not ever again. With Margaret's video, Christina's documents, the pattern of victims, and Walker's investigation, we finally had enough. Not for the DA, he was compromised. For the FBI, crossing state lines, financial crimes, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice spanning decades. You know what I learned from my divorce, Elena said, when I told her the plan. When the local system fails you, go federal. State judges can be bought. State DAs can be pressured. But the feds? They love taking down rich people. It's like Christmas for them. Walker made the call that night. Christmas Eve. Victoria hosted her annual charity gala at the Bennett estate. 100 guests. The cream of Connecticut society. Crystal chandeliers glittering above tables set with fine china. A string quartet playing Handel in the corner. Champagne that cost more per bottle than I used to make in a week. The perfect setting for the fall of a queen. I went into labor that afternoon, 8 months along. Early, but not dangerous. The contractions started around 2 in the afternoon, just as Walker was coordinating the final details of the arrest with the FBI team. Elena drove me to the hospital, breaking approximately 15 traffic laws, and ignoring my protests that I was fine, that we could wait, that the baby was not supposed to come yet. I can't have her now, I gasped between contractions. Not before. Honey, Elena said, the baby doesn't care about your schedule. She's coming. The delivery room was a blur of pain and fear, and doctors telling me to breathe. Marcus was not there. I had not called him. I did not want him there. Walker was there, though, standing in the corner of the room, on his phone, coordinating the arrest, but there. Present, bearing witness. The FBI team was in position. Agents dressed as catering staff, as guests, as valets. They had been planning this for weeks, ever since Walker made the call that set everything in motion. The takedown would happen during the party. Maximum public humiliation. All Victoria's supporters, all her society friends, all the people who had enabled her and covered for her and looked the other way, they would all see exactly who she really was. Ellie Margaret Bennett was born at 6:23 in the evening on Christmas Eve. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, dark hair, blue eyes that would probably change, 10 fingers, 10 toes, perfect. I held my daughter for the first time, and every fear, every fight, every moment of despair dissolved into something else. Love, pure, fierce, terrifying love. The kind of love that would make me kill to protect her. The kind of love that would make me die to keep her safe. For just a moment, I understood Victoria, understood what she had felt 25 years ago when she realized her husband was hurting her sons, understood the desperate, savage love that had driven her to poison and murder. But I was not going to become Victoria. I was not going to let that love twist me into a monster. I was going to protect my daughter the right way. Through truth, through justice, through building a world where she would never have to be afraid. I'll never let anyone hurt you, I whispered to my newborn daughter. Never. Elena sat beside my bed, crying happy tears. Walker stood by the door, phone in hand, waiting. Do it, I said. Now. While I'm here with her. End it. The Bennett Gala was in full swing when FBI agents walked through the front door. I watched it happen on Walker's phone, propped up on my hospital bed with my newborn daughter sleeping against my chest. Watched the agents move through the crowd like shadows. Watched Victoria's face when she saw them coming. Her expression cycled through surprise, then confusion, then recognition, then something that looked almost like relief, like she had been waiting for this moment for 25 years. Like part of her had always known it would end this way. Victoria Bennett, the lead agent said, his voice cutting through the string quartet, you are under arrest for the murder of Robert Bennett, the attempted murder of Rachel Bennett, and multiple counts of assault with intent to cause harm. The guests gasped. Champagne flutes froze mid-sip. Somewhere, someone dropped a glass, and the sound of shattering crystal echoed through the suddenly silent room. This is absurd, Victoria said. Her voice was ice. This is harassment. My lawyers? Your lawyers are being arrested as we speak. Conspiracy to obstruct justice. Derek pushed forward through the crowd. Mother, what's happening? Marcus was there too, pale, shocked, looking like a boy who had just watched his whole world collapse. This is that woman, Victoria spat. Your wife. She's done this. She's destroyed everything I built. Walker held up his phone so Victoria could see the screen. Me, in my hospital bed. Ellie, in my arms. No, Victoria, I said. You destroyed everything yourself. I just turned on the lights. The breakdown happened fast. Victoria's mask cracked. The society matron, the charity queen, the perfect mother, all of it fell away. You don't understand, she screamed. I did everything for my boys. Everything. Robert would have destroyed them. I protected them. Ma'am, the agent started. Anything you say. I saved them. I saved them from their father. I saved them from the monster he was. And I would do it again. 1,000 times. I would do it again. Derek and Marcus stared at their mother, hearing for the first time the truth of their childhood, the abuse, the murder, the decades of lies and secrets and covering up. What is she talking about? Derek asked. His voice was small, lost, the voice of a boy, not a man. Dad, Marcus whispered. She's talking about Dad? Victoria realized what she had said, in front of 100 witnesses, all of it recorded on a dozen phones. The confession she had hidden for 25 years finally spoken aloud, and I watched, from my hospital bed, with my newborn daughter in my arms, as the woman who had tried to destroy me was led away in handcuffs, screaming into the Christmas night. 3 months after the arrest. Spring was coming, the snow was melting, the trees were starting to bud, and Marcus Bennett showed up at my apartment for the first time since everything fell apart. He looked broken, thinner, older, the golden boy of the Bennett family, tarnished, beyond recognition. His clothes were rumpled, like he had stopped caring about appearances. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he had been crying or drinking or both. "I want to explain," he started. "There's nothing to explain." I didn't know. About my father, about what she did. I didn't know. I looked at him, really looked at him, for maybe the first time since I had married him, and I saw him clearly. He was not evil. He was not a monster. He was a boy who had been abused and traumatized and raised by a woman who had protected him in the worst possible way. He had spent his whole life hiding from the truth, burying the memories, pretending everything was fine. But that did not excuse what he had done to me. "You didn't know your mother was a murderer," I said. "Fine, I believe that, but you knew I was telling the truth about the poison. You knew something was wrong, and you chose her anyway. I was scared. I was pregnant and terrified and alone. My voice rose despite myself. And you called me crazy. You tried to take my daughter. You moved into the guest room and called your mother every night to report on me. You let your lawyers dig through my past looking for anything they could use to prove I was unfit. I let him see all of it. The hurt, the anger, the finality. You weren't protecting your mother, Marcus. You were protecting yourself from having to choose, from having to be a man, from having to face the truth about who you really are." "I love you," he said. "I still love you?" "I don't care." The words came out flat. "True. Rachel, please." I closed the door on him. On 4 years of marriage, on the dream of family I had been chasing my whole life. And I did not cry. I did not feel empty. I felt free. Marcus's destruction was complete. His real estate business collapsed. Clients did not want to be associated with the murder family. The Bennett name, once synonymous with wealth and respectability, was now a punchline on late-night television and a cautionary tale in business schools. Derek divorced Christina, who took him for half of everything. She got the house, the cars, a settlement that would let her live comfortably for the rest of her life. She deserved it. She had been a victim too, even if she had also been complicit. Derek published a book about surviving childhood abuse. It made the bestseller list. He named Marcus as complicit in covering up their mother's crimes, and the resulting lawsuit consumed whatever was left of their relationship. Marcus lost the custody battle. I got full custody of Ellie. He got supervised visits once a month in a visitation center with social workers watching to make sure he did not try to take her. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment on the bad side of town, working as a sales associate at a furniture store owned by a former rival. He had started drinking too much. His hair was going gray. He looked, according to Elena, who ran into him at a grocery store, like a man who had lost everything and knew it was his own fault. "Karma's a bitch," Elena said when she told me about seeing him. "No," I replied, watching Ellie sleep in her crib. "Karma's a mother." The trial made national news. Victoria Bennett, society matron and charity queen, accused of murder and attempted murder spanning 25 years. The media loved it. A real-life soap opera, they called it. A story too twisted for fiction. Margaret Holloway testified via video from her nursing home. She told the story of Robert Bennett's abuse and Victoria's response. She described what she had seen in the kitchen that morning, the brown bottle, the drops of poison, the careful precision. Christina testified in person. She told the story of her 3 miscarriages, the teas and supplements Victoria had insisted she drink, The years of believing her own body had failed her. 4 other women told their stories. The pattern of mysterious illnesses. The recoveries that happened only after they left the Bennett orbit. The years of self-doubt and gaslighting and being told they were imagining things. And I testified. I told the story of the Thanksgiving gravy, the taste that did not belong, the lab results that confirmed my worst fears, the destruction that followed when I tried to tell the truth. The defense tried sympathy. Abused wife protecting her children, they argued. A mother who did terrible things for understandable reasons. It did not work. Victoria Bennett may have had reasons for what she did to Robert Bennett, the prosecutor said in closing, but she didn't stop there. She spent 25 years poisoning anyone who threatened her control, not her children's safety. Her control. She tried to kill a pregnant woman and steal her grandchild. That's not a protective mother. That's a predator. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Sentence: life without the possibility of parole. Victoria was led away, without screaming this time, without drama. She walked with her head high, her spine straight, the same perfect posture she had maintained her whole life. At the courtroom door, she paused, turned. Her eyes found mine across the crowded room. "Take care of my grandchild," she said, quiet, almost gentle. "She's my child," I replied. "Not yours, never yours." The door closed behind her. 6 months after the trial, James Walker took me to dinner, a quiet restaurant in a town where nobody knew either of us. Candles on the table, wine that I actually drank, because I was not pregnant anymore, and I had earned it. "I've been thinking about something," he said. "That sounds dangerous." He smiled. The smile that had gotten me through so many dark nights, so many moments when I wanted to give up. "I've been thinking about how brave you are, how you never stopped fighting, even when everyone told you to, even when it would have been easier, how you believed in yourself when no one else did." "I had help," I said. "You, Elena, Christina. I couldn't have done any of it alone. You had allies. But the fight was yours, and you won." He reached across the table, took my hand. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I know it's too soon. I know you've been through hell, and you need time to heal. But I want you to know, I see you, all of you, and I think you're extraordinary." I looked at this man, this good man, this honest man, this man who had believed me from the very first moment when no one else would, and I felt something I had not felt in years. Hope. Not for a fairy tale, not for a rescue. I did not need to be rescued. I had rescued myself. Just the possibility of something real. Something built on truth and respect and mutual belief. Something that would not crumble the first time it was tested. "How about we start with coffee?" I said. "Tomorrow, after Ellie's daycare drop-off." He smiled. "I'd like that." 1 year later. My apartment was small, 2 bedrooms instead of the 4 we had in the house, with Marcus. A galley kitchen instead of the gourmet one I had never used anyway. Street noise instead of suburban quiet, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture had been chosen by me. Every photograph on the walls had been placed by me. Every decision, from the paint color on the walls to the flowers in the window box, had been made by me alone. I had never had that before, never had a space that was truly mine, that no one could take away from me, that I did not have to earn or prove myself worthy of. Ellie's room was painted sage green, the same color I had chosen for the nursery in the house I had shared with Marcus. The color of hope, the color of growth. The walls were covered with photographs. Ellie at the park, laughing at pigeons. Ellie with Elena's kids, covered in finger paint. Ellie with James's daughters. Emma and Sophie, who had appointed themselves her honorary big sisters. Thanksgiving arrived again, and I dreaded it for weeks. The anniversary of the worst day of my life. The day I had bitten into a forkful of poisoned gravy and everything had changed. The day I had realized that the family I had married into wanted me dead. But this year would be different. I set the table for 9 people, not 18, like the Bennett Thanksgiving, not the cold perfection of crystal chandeliers and fine china and passive-aggressive comments disguised as compliments. Just 9 people who mattered. Around a table, I had bought secondhand and refinished myself, sanding away years of scratches and stains and other people's memories until it was smooth and new and mine. Elena arrived first with her 3 kids, all of them carrying dishes that smelled amazing. I made the cranberry sauce, she announced. No emergency extraction text this year. No promises, I said, and we both laughed. Christina came next with her new boyfriend, Daniel. He was a kindergarten teacher, gentle and kind, the opposite of everything the Bennett men had been. He looked at Christina like she was the most amazing person he had ever met. And maybe she was. She was 5 months pregnant, glowing in a way I had never seen her glow before. IVF finally worked, she had told me when she shared the news. After everything Victoria did, after all those years of thinking my body was broken, it worked. The doctors think the damage wasn't permanent. They think I can carry this one to term. I hope so, I had said, and I had meant it. Christina and I would never be best friends. There was too much history between us, too much betrayal and pain, but we had an understanding. We had both survived Victoria Bennett. That created a bond that nothing else could break. Margaret Holloway arrived in a wheelchair pushed by her daughter. She had moved to a facility closer to the city after the trial, close enough to watch that baby grow up, she said. She was 80 years old and frail, but her eyes were still sharp, and her mind was still clear. James Walker came last, with his 2 daughters in tow. Emma was 12, Sophie was 9, and they made a beeline for Ellie the moment they walked through the door. "There she is," Emma squealed. "There's our favorite baby." Ellie, who was 1 year old and had no idea what was happening, squealed back in delight. I stood in my kitchen, watching them all settle in, and felt something I had not felt in years. Whole. Complete. Enough. The turkey was golden. The stuffing was perfect. The gravy was store-bought. Nobody commented on that last part. "Before we eat," I said, standing at the head of my own table, in my own home, "I want to say something." The room quieted. Ellie babbled happily in her high chair, oblivious to the solemnity of the moment. A year ago, I sat at a different table in a different house with people who wanted me dead. I didn't know it then. I thought I was just uncomfortable, just tolerated, just not enough. I looked at the faces around my table. Elena, who had believed me without question. Christina, who had become an unlikely ally. Margaret, who had waited 25 years for someone to listen. James, who had given me hope when I had none left. What I've learned this year is that family isn't blood. Family isn't legal documents or shared last names or obligations you can't escape. Family is the people who believe you when no one else does, who stand with you when it's hard, who show up with ice cream and legal documents when you're at your lowest. Elena raised her glass. "I did do that. You did. And that's why you're here. All of you. You're my family now. The one I chose. The one that chose me back. We ate until we were stuffed. We laughed until we cried. We told stories about the worst things we had survived. And somehow, in the telling, they became less heavy, less dark, more like proof that we had made it through." Ellie threw mashed sweet potato in her hair, and Emma and Sophie thought it was the funniest thing they had ever seen. I watched my daughter, surrounded by people who loved her, and I thought about everything I had survived to get here. Foster care. 7 different homes before I turned 18. Parents who died when I was too young to remember them properly. Years of being told I was difficult and paranoid and too sensitive. A marriage to a man who chose his mother over me. A mother-in-law who tried to kill me. A system that failed me at every turn. And yet here I was, alive, happy, whole. After the guests left, James and I stood in the kitchen doing dishes. Ellie was asleep in her crib, exhausted from all the attention and the sweet potato throwing. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt like peace instead of emptiness. "You know what I love about you," James said. "My winning personality? You never stopped. Even when everyone told you to. Even when it would have been easier. Even when giving up would have been the rational choice. You never stopped fighting. I had a reason to fight." I looked toward Ellie's room. "She's lucky," James said, "having you for a mother." I thought about my own mother, dead when I was 8. About all the mothers I had wished for in foster care. The ones I had hoped would choose me and never did. About Victoria, who had twisted her love for her sons into something monstrous. "I'm going to tell her something," I said, "when she's old enough. Something I wish someone had told me." "What's that?" "Trust yourself, even when everyone says you're wrong. Even when it's easier to doubt. Even when you're scared and alone and the whole world is telling you you're crazy. Trust yourself. Your instincts exist for a reason." That's good advice. I wish someone had told me that 20 years ago. I would have saved myself a lot of pain. Would you have believed them? I thought about it. Probably not. Some lessons you have to learn yourself. Some strength you have to build by using it. He pulled me close. I let him. That night, after everyone had gone home and the apartment was quiet, I stood over Ellie's crib, watched my daughter sleep. I used to think strength meant not needing anyone. Being tough, being independent, surviving on your own. I was wrong. Strength is asking for help when you need it. It's trusting your instincts even when everyone doubts you. It's finding your people, your real people, and letting them love you. It's being brave enough to believe in something after everything has taught you not to believe. Victoria Bennett spent her whole life protecting her family through control and fear and poison. She thought that made her strong. She thought she was doing the right thing, the necessary thing, the only thing she could do. But real strength is building a family through love, through trust, through showing up for each other when it matters, through telling the truth even when lies would be easier, through believing in people even when they give you every reason not to. My daughter was going to know that. From the very beginning, she was going to trust herself, believe in herself, fight for herself, and she was going to know that she was never alone. That's the real happy ending. Not the fairy tale, not the rescue, not the prince who saves the princess and carries her off to his castle. Just love, just trust, just family, just us. If this story moved you, if you found yourself holding your breath during the dark moments and cheering during the victories, if you wanted to stand up and applaud when those handcuffs clicked shut on Christmas Eve, then do me a favor, hit that like button. It tells me you want more stories like this. Stories about ordinary people who face extraordinary evil and find the strength to fight back. Drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had a gut feeling that something was wrong and everyone told you that you were crazy? Have you ever trusted your instincts when it would have been easier to doubt? I want to hear your story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who has been doubted. Someone who has been gaslit. Someone who is sitting alone right now, wondering if they're imagining things, wondering if anyone will ever believe them. Tell them they're not crazy. Their instincts exist for a reason, and they're not alone. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because every week I bring you stories of ordinary people who faced extraordinary evil and won. Stories about the strength we don't know we have until we need it. Stories about the family we choose when the family we're born into fails us. Remember, trust yourself. Your instincts exist for a reason. The voice inside you that says something is wrong, listen to it. The feeling in your gut that won't go away, pay attention to it. You're not crazy, you're paying attention, and that might just save your life. I'll see you in the next story. One more thing before we dive in. If this story moves you, if it makes you think, if it reminds you of something you've been through or someone you know, do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss a story like this one. And if you know someone who needs to hear that they're not crazy, that their instincts matter, that they deserve to be believed, share this with them. Sometimes a story is exactly what someone needs to find their courage. Now, let's begin. And that is the story of Rachel Bennett, a school nurse from Ohio who trusted her instincts when everyone called her crazy, who fought for her daughter when no one else would, who proved that ordinary people can defeat extraordinary evil when they refuse to stay silent. The meaning of this story is simple, but powerful. You don't need to be special to be strong. You don't need money or connections or a powerful family behind you. You just need one thing: the courage to trust yourself. Victoria Bennett spent 25 years getting away with murder because her victims doubted themselves, because they believed the lies, because they stayed silent. Rachel didn't stay silent, and that made all the difference. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had a moment like Rachel's, a moment when you knew something was wrong, and everyone told you that you were imagining it? Drop a comment below. Tell me your story, because I believe you, even if no one else did. And if this story touched you, if it made you feel seen, if it reminded you that your instincts matter, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss another story. Because every week, I bring you stories like this one. Stories about ordinary people who faced extraordinary darkness and found the light. Remember, trust yourself. Your gut feeling exists for a reason, and you are never as alone as you think you are. I'll see you in the next story.